For the first time, the United States Justice Department has accused China of cyber spying. An indictment was issued against 5 Chinese military officials. It alleges the officers from the Chinese People's Liberation Army conspired to hack into the computers of 6 American companies, stealing trade secrets. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder said the charges should serve as a wake-up call.
This administration will not tolerate actions by any nation that seeks to illegally sabotage American companies and undermine the integrity of fair competition in the operation of the free market.
China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Xin Gang strongly denied the allegations, stating, quote, "The Chinese government, the Chinese military and their relevant personnel have never engaged or participated in cyber theft of trade secrets. The U.S. accusation against Chinese personnel is purely ungrounded and absurd," end quote. China lodged a protest urging the United States to correct its mistake and withdraw the indictment. It also suspended activities with the China-U.S. Cyber Working Group. Well, joining us now to give us some historic perspective on Monday's events is CCTV's Jim Spellman. Jim, what's the background to this?
The charges in this indictment date back to 2006, but really these kind of accusations back and forth between China and the United States go back well over a decade, essentially to the beginning of the internet being used widely in business, being used widely in government. Accusations from both sides that the other was spying on each other. So I think we have to take both the accusations and the denials with a grain of salt from both sides.
So here we have the United States accusing China of espionage, of using the information for economic advantage. Do we know if the United States does the same thing?
We know a lot more now than we knew about a year ago when Edward Snowden, the former NSA contractor, started leaking. In this year-long period since we've gotten to know more about the NSA, the United States government has consistently drawn a line between what they call spying for national security purposes and what they call economic spying that would give advantage to companies in that home country. Listen to the White House spokesperson Jay Carney speaking about this Monday.
There is a significant and important distinction between the gathering of intelligence for national security reasons, which the United States does, and surely China does, and virtually every other nation on earth does, and the gathering of economic data for the purpose of providing a competitive advantage to companies in your own country. That is not something that the United States does.
Critics of the NSA who have been watching this organization closely over the last year, just aren't buying this explanation that the U.S. doesn't take these secrets and use them for economic benefit. And no one less than Edward Snowden himself, perhaps the man with the most insight, having possessed at least at one point all of these documents, basically says the U.S. does indeed take this information for any kind of gain it can get. Listen to him talking to a German TV network a couple of months ago.
There's no question that the U.S. is engaged in economic spying. If there's information at Siemens that they think would be beneficial to the national interests, not the national security of the United States, they'll go after that information and they'll take it.
He was speaking there of German industrial company Siemens, but this clearly goes for all sorts of companies. Huawei, tech giant based in China, is essentially barred from doing business in the United States because the United States authorities have said that they put in technical backdoors that would allow the Chinese government to use their technology to somehow get into U.S. government systems. Well, documents released by Edward Snowden show that the United States was doing the exact same thing to that same company, Huawei, looking to get an advantage on Chinese government, to get an insight into them and to other countries that Huawei would sell products to, it would be Iran, Afghanistan, Cuba, et cetera. There's a lot of this going on from all sides, and it's a little hard to take seriously these strict denials that nobody is doing anything.
Right, but here's another question, Jim. Why did the U.S. do this now? I mean, what is it hoping to get out of this? I mean, all it seems to have done right now is to inflame the relationship with China, and I'm sure there's going to be some kind of diplomatic fallout from this.
The State Department today, there was a sort of a fascinating briefing. They kept referring questions back to the Department of Justice, the part of the United States government that brought these charges against these 5 men. But there was a clear sense that this could cause problems for U.S. diplomacy. Consistently, you hear from the United States government how important it is for them to work on this bilateral relationship with China. Well, imagine if the situation was reversed and the Chinese government put out wanted posters for 5 NSA employees, 5 American soldiers, with their pictures on it, and sought at least, made a show of seeking to have them extradited to China. It would cause huge problems. No reason to think that this isn't going to cause those same kind of problems. And with everything that's been going on in the region and the U.S. pivot to Asia and everything going on in the South China Sea, the timing is awkward at best. It's going to present some real challenges for American diplomats.
Right, and another question arises with the staging of this exercise today. I mean, there was Eric Holder speaking there, and in all seriousness, at this news conference, he said he hoped the Chinese would work with us, his words, and respect our criminal justice system, and that we will see justice prevail. He expressed the hope that these men that were named, that are now on posters all over the place, will be handed over to the United States. I mean, that's a pipe dream, isn't it? That's not going to happen.
It's a complete pipe dream, and I think it shows how much of this whole thing is about the visuals. It's about the sort of stagecraft of making a show to the domestic audience here, perhaps in the United States, that the U.S. is serious about this, serious about protecting U.S. businesses, as they would say. But at the end of the day, what it really, I think, shows is we're in this era, this cyber era, and we don't have ground rules that everyone is agreeing upon the way people have agreed on aircraft, all following sets of rules, the way we've agreed on the radio frequencies being divided up between cell phones here and radios here, et cetera. We just don't have that for the internet, and it's really essentially hurting everybody from all sides to have all of this unchecked spying going on. That's what I've been hearing from analysts today that I've been speaking with, that this sense that something has to change, and it has to be more than posturing and denials and this kind of political stagecraft.
Right, and I'm wondering, that's something that has to happen. I mean, have there been negotiations with the Chinese? Do we know if the United States has been talking with the Chinese through diplomatic channels rather than staging a news conference in Washington to try and get this problem that they have rectified?
Well, I think it's a lot bigger than anything that's going to happen that quickly. The State Department was clearly taken by surprise to at least some degree that the Justice Department did this. I don't think the United States is on the same page as far as how they want to deal with this with China and other countries.
Jim Spellman, thank you for that. We are going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll get reaction from a former official in the George W. Bush administration, an expert on US-China relations, and the former translator for Deng Xiaoping. That's when the heat continues. Stay with us.